And now, the conclusion of our backstories.
I was blessed to have my mom and dad in the house. I grew up on Cambridge Place between Gates and Green in Brooklyn, and my parents bought the house when I was born, the year I was born, and my family ridiculed them. My mother and father would catch a lot of ridicule for the things that they decided to do because it was considered the hood back then, but they wanted to purchase a home. And so now, I mean, they paid $25,000 for it back then. Now, because
Wow.
Barclays Center and everything, it's worth millions. My dad was always there. And as we got older, my brother had issues with my father because he felt like he should be there more. My father was working a lot. And my dad's response was, well, my father wasn't even in the house. I thought I was doing right by being there, you know? So I I married my ex-husband, and I ended up staying in a very abusive relationship because in my family, you stay in your marriage no matter what. I watched my aunts in abusive relationships, and so I caught a lot of ridicule. When I finally decided to leave my marriage, it was because I didn't want my daughters to replicate anything that was taking place in a home. And I felt that in the beginning it wasn't abusive because I fought back. You know what I mean? I can fight, and if he swung on me, a nice frying pan to the head, slow anybody down. And I'm not talking about one of them little new ones. I'm talking about that shit that's great when you buy it, you put in the oven,
Cast iron.
it turn black. That one, that
Ain't
can
no joke.
take you out. I'm not playing. Or stab you in your hand with a fork, or what have you. Listen,
Wow.
you're not gonna put your hands on me and think that's it. But my kids will. I have daughters, all daughters, and they were coming of age, and I started saying to myself, if this happened to my kids, I have no one to blame but myself. So I chose to get out. And I have family members who say, you're not supposed to leave your marriage. Bullshit, you get hit in your fucking face. Excuse my
Right.
expression, sorry. But I've been through enough. I got 27 stitches in my face, not all from him to say, because I was, a correction officer for years. But yeah, there's a portion of that came from his hand. And I never had a drug issue in my house. I had a ridicule issue in my house. I used to dislike my mother for many, many, many years. Didn't realize my mother was covering up for other things. My mother would take the blame for things that weren't her fault to cover for other things that were happening. And as I became an adult, it was the first time I looked at my mom and said, I'm so sorry. Kids don't come with directions. She had 4 to raise, and we had 4 different personalities to the point where I didn't even realize what my brothers and sisters were doing. And then as we came of age, I don't want to tell their business without their permission, but they were into a lot of things that if my child was doing that, oh dear God, so my mother I guess she'd rather me be mad at her than to know what was actually going on. And then I stayed in this marriage, covering up the embarrassment of an abusive relationship. I was a correction officer. That's not supposed to happen to us. I'm fighting in the jails every day. I'm telling grown men, I started corrections at 21. I'm telling 40, 50-year-old men to lock in their cells and play their bed and fighting if it didn't go right and coming home to this every day. I remember coming home one time and I looked at my ex-husband and said, why are you still here? Like, I just didn't want him to be here. And then I had to take the cake from my daughters when their dad wasn't here. It's mommy's fault. And I was like, well, maybe one day they'll understand. And a few days ago when I was in Atlanta, my oldest daughter told me she understood. I'm very big on holidays. My mom was very big on holidays. So I'm very big on holidays. I have to have a Christmas tree up. I don't even spend Thanksgiving in my own home, but I cook Thanksgiving dinner like there's 100 people here. My house has to smell like cinnamon, and the pepper from the macaroni and cheese, things that my grandmother instilled in me. And my daughter said to me, her friends told her they never had a Christmas tree. and never had a birthday party. And she's thinking back to me. I literally bought a pony when she was 5, my oldest daughter, because I couldn't find one to rent. And then after the party, I donated it to the zoo.
What?
And yeah.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Wait, you bought the pony?
I bought
That's beautiful.
her name was Peanut. Peanut.
Aw.
Wait, I think I know Peanut. Wait. I think Peanut came by my house.
Peanut looking for you. And so she said her friend told her, because I went in October. October was her birthday, and I went down to Atlanta to give her a birthday party. And I had all of her friends do the sipping paint, and yeah. And so she said she was being a spoiled brat that she is, and she didn't like the table I purchased to do the sipping paint on. And her friend said, "Drive with me to Target. I want to talk to you." And her friend told her she never had a birthday party.
Oh.
She was like, "Yo, your mother does for you." So I'm in Atlanta a few days ago. My daughter was doing a pageant, and right before I left her, because she had to be sequestered for 3 days during this pageant, she looked at me and said, "I get it now." I just cried. I'm about to cry, Jesus Christ, and I don't look good when I cry. You have melanin. I'll be bright red. It's gonna be horrible. I'm gonna be damn near.
We gotta return. I got tissue. Look, here, take the tissue. Take the tissue.
Not that one, but not that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I can tell you stories. Like, I remember when my oldest daughter was 6 months old. I was going through postpartum, and my postpartum was, I felt like everybody was trying to take my child. I would have dreams that I couldn't find her in the morning. And so I told my ex that my daughter wasn't spending the night out. And his mother told him, "Punch that bitch in the face."
What?
I had never, that shit, I was like,
That's
what?
color purple shit right there.
To make a long story short, I woke the fuck up, laid out on the couch with my face wide open.
What?
I grabbed a machete and tried to take him out. I kid you not.
What are you doing
What?
in your house?
Was there a machete?
His mama had a machete. I grabbed it. Listen, it was the first thing. I looked up when I woke up from his sister screaming. She said she thought I was dead. And he had a mirror behind the couch. You know that classic hood mirror that's the shape of the Empire, the Twin Towers. You know, everybody in the hood has that 3-piece set.
Yes.
And so I looked in the mirror and I saw blood trickling down my face. And I spazzed. And so his sister grabbed me and was like, "No," I literally ripped, you know, the bottom of a banister, that big piece. I ripped it out of the floor trying to get to him. And then they told me, "Go get my face done." I went to the hospital. God bless the woo, because I was able to get specific plastic surgeons to fix my face. And they told him I had to perform. And and I left him after that. And do you know, my father came to me and said, "He wants to make up with you, and if you can make up with him, it'd be best to have your daughter's father in the house." And I listened to my dad and brought that raggedy bastard back into my life, and went 15 years of dealing with that.
You did 15 more years after that?
Like a big girl.
Wow.
What was your break point?
My break point, honestly, he cheated on me.
What? That was the breaking point?
Wow.
Because I thought what broke me was, if he cheated on me and I took him back and he tried to be intimate with me, the thought of him being with another woman, I threw up on him. It made me sick. I don't want you touching me. And so I told him, "You gotta go." That was my breaking point. All of those years, and it wasn't every day. It wasn't even every week. It might have been 6 months to a year in between, but the incidents when they happened were severe. It wasn't like an argument. It was either all or nothing. And I don't have a switch. So once you swing at me, it's all.
Well, you
You
said
know?
that I think now I understand why it wasn't your breaking point. You didn't feel like at first that you were in an abusive relationship.
I didn't realize it was an abusive relationship till I decided to get out.
Right, because you were fighting back.
Right.
How
I
do you go
was
fight back?
hour in the corner, oh God, don't hurt me type of person. No, it was an all-out brawl. We fought for 3 hours outside my house one time. 3 hours.
Well, I don't know. You get the title tonight. I haven't even talked.
Yes, for real.
I'm telling you, as far as being able to overcome and not to look like what you've been through,
Yes.
Jesus, you
So,
Yes.
and to still be here and to be the woman that you are and to be a
yeah.
for your children, your daughters, and
So I have a question for you guys. So I know you guys, call me bougie or whatever, but
I don't, Tina.
Okay, thank you, Corey.
I do.
Not to your face. Not to your face.
Exactly. Well, I call it her face. 2 words, Tina. Bougie.
So now that we're sharing stories, I want you guys to tell me, what do you think my backstory is? Like, what do you think my family life was like growing up? Anyone?
Bougie.
Knowing a little bit about it, I would say you look nothing like what you came from. Nothing. Nothing.
I think you was West Philadelphia born and raised. And then
Carlton Banks was her cousin.
yeah, your family sent you to Bel Air.
You ain't right, Lynette.
Man,
No, I think most times when people are bougie, they've had a really hard life. So therefore, they want to act like they're better than everybody. That is Tina.
I didn't say that, Tina.
Wow.
I just said bougie, but I ain't say all that. That's
That's what she was thinking.
What I found out and getting to know everyone is that my story actually relates more to Lynette's than anyone else's. So
geez.
my mom also had me at a very young age. And back then, when she got pregnant with me, my grandfather was a single father because his wife had passed away, and he had 5 kids to take care of. And by the time my mom had me, she already had my older brother at 15. So then she got pregnant with me at 17 going on 18. And my grandfather's like, I can't take care of any more kids. So she ended up going into a home for unwed mothers back in the day, back in New York. And what happened from there was from the time I was born, they took one picture of me to give to her, and then I went straight into foster care. And I didn't know my family for the first 3.5 years of my life. So I was in foster care being raised by a white family in Brooklyn somewhere. Brooklyn, Manhattan, somewhere in New York.
Oh, a white family. Oh.
That's where the bougie comes in at.
Okay. All right.
She's not a Negro like the rest of us.
Yeah, she's a house Negro. Come on.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm just playing.
Listen, don't hate house Negro. Somebody had to pass the lemonade. Don't be mad.
I still can't take the heat. I can't take the sun. So
Somebody had to pass the lemonade. I'm just saying.
lemonade. That's
And
right.
with Donald Trump in office, y'all better stay close to me. I swear to God, I take all y'all with me. I promise.
Yes, Tajiri got that complexion of protection. Thank you.
All right, so
No.
through that experience, actually, while I was with that family, I actually experienced molestation. So the woman, Mary, had a son and a daughter. And the son was, from what I recall, about 14, 15 years old. And I remember him touching me very inappropriately, and the little girl watching, his sister, and like kind of telling him what to do. And I also remember him saying stuff like, nobody wants you, you're an ugly little black girl, and stuff like that. And when my grandfather eventually remarried and decided he was going to move down south, he told my mother that he wanted to get me out of foster care because all this time he had been hoping she would get herself together, she would get her act together, but she had already had another child right as she had me. And so he was like, hey, my older brother was adopted by her godparents because they couldn't have kids, so they adopted him from birth. And then my younger brother, his father and his father's mother took him. So I was the only one that's kind of left out there in the system. And so my grandfather said, you know, before we leave New York, I want to take Tana. I want to go get Tana. And my mother said, well, I'm not going to let you adopt her, but you can have guardianship. And so he got guardianship of me when I was 3.5, 4 years old. And I still remember to this day sitting in the car with people that I felt like I didn't know on this long road trip, smelling chicken wrapped in foil, like fried chicken wrapped in aluminum foil. And whenever I have that smell, it reminds me of that road trip.
Right.
I don't mean to laugh, but I'm just thinking she was a white family and
Yes.
yes. in the car eating fried chicken. That was a culture shock right there. She would be pate to fried chicken.
She said pate.
Exactly. And I remember, you know, talking to my grandparents when I got a little older about it. And, you know, that generation, they never talk about family secrets. They never talk about things that have happened in the past. And they never really wanted to talk to me about it. So what I decided to do just recently is I want to locate my foster family. And, you know, my aunt.
Did you like kill your brother, kill their child? Because if you're looking for them, it's for pure revenge. Don't go looking for that.
This is
That's the dirt where it belongs. What are you gonna say to them? You motherfucker should have did
oh
it.
my gosh, the jury.
I don't want revenge.
Oh my
The
goodness.
jury like to chop his balls off.
Get the machete. Get the machete.
No, hillbilly. Oh, you know, guy from his old hillbilly.
She gonna bring the machete. God dog it. This is too much. Oh my God. This is too
No,
much.
I was trying to find them because I'm working with a private investigator because I want to find who they were. Like, I know the last name was Haynes because whenever I was little, I used to see the commercial, like the Haynes pantyhose. And I remember thinking, like, I remember Mrs. Haynes. And I remember one day asking my grandfather, like, who's Mrs. Haynes? And he just had this look come over his face of fear, like, oh my God, she remembered. And he wouldn't answer. And he's like, why'd you ask me that? And I said, I remember somebody named Mrs. Haynes, and it was a white lady. And she used to take care of me. And he was like, I don't know who you're talking about. So he just denied it. And so, I mean, I lost both my parents. So my mother and my father both passed away when I was 21. They passed away 3 months apart. But what I decided to do now is look for that family, or at least some member of that family. I don't know if the mother is still alive. I have good feelings about her, but again, the son, the daughter, not so much. And I don't really remember her husband. And so now I have you ever heard a show called The Locator? You ever watch that show? Where this guy goes out, finds people who were adopted and finds their birth family and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working right now. Yeah, so I'm working with him right now to try and find my foster family, because he's like, this is a very interesting case. People aren't usually looking for foster families. They're usually looking for birth families, but you know your birth family, and now you're trying to find your foster family. And I said, yeah, because I feel like those 3.5 years I was with them, almost 4 years, built a foundation in me of something that I still have in me. And I want to know what that was. Like, what did that woman teach me growing up? What was my first words? You know, what age was I when I started walking? Like, all those things that everybody else has knowledge of in their families, I have zero of it. No one in my family knows anything about me up until I was 4 years old. And the only thing we have is that one little picture, which is my screensaver on my computer, of me in the hospital that they gave my mother. That's it. My birth certificate, has no one's name on it. It doesn't have my mother's or my father's. It doesn't list any of my like information, like height, weight, time I was born, nothing. It looks like a fake birth certificate. And I've had people tell me, like, this is not a real birth certificate. I'm like, yeah, it is. And what I found out was that they didn't put that information on it back then because they always assumed once you went in foster care from birth, you were going to be adopted. So they didn't want you to have any information about your family. And so I've reordered the birth certificate twice, and it comes back the same way each time.
Wow, Tana.
You know what's
Wow. That's heartbreaking.
That's
you
deep.
remember that from such a young age.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember everything from when I was like 2 and up because of the traumatic experiences that took place in my family where I lost a lot of family members. There was a car accident when we were coming home from a family reunion that killed 3 of my cousins and my aunt's husband. But a lot of my aunts, and I witnessed it.
I remember my mother having a supervised visitation with me while I was in foster care. I remember them taking me to a building, and the building had like windows on both sides. And I was little, and I had on these little socks with the little laces around the edges. And I'm holding on to this lady's hand, and I think she was my social worker. And I remember her kind of pushing me and telling me, like, that's your mother, go say hi. And I was like standing real stiff like this, like I didn't want to go to her because I didn't know her. And she kept pushing me and pushing me. And then when my mother bent down and opened her arms, then I went to her. And I still to this day remember what she smelled like. And I remember what she had on and everything. Yeah. But it was like in a cafeteria, and it was like these chairs that look like with the seats attached to the tables. It was that kind of situation. So when I was telling my aunt this, she was wondering, like, my mom's sister, she's the only one in the family besides my uncle who's still around. And she was like, well, why do you want to dig this up? I don't understand why you want to do it. And I said, well, you remember your childhood and you have pictures, and that's a piece of your life that's not meant. I said, to me, it's almost like I didn't exist for 4 years. I said, so of course I want answers, and it's not to hold grudges or anything. And I said, who knows if this woman's still alive? When they come back to me after investigating this, they may tell me, she passed away years ago, but maybe the son or the daughter is still around. Either way, I feel like there's some questions that someone should be able to answer for me. So
and they might have pictures.
They might have pictures. Exactly. Yeah.
And I'm sure you were a cute baby.
I think so too.
Of course you are.
Tana, you said something that triggered something over here in my past, in my life, and that was molestation. And I was molested by my uncle, who is still alive to this day. And oh my gosh, what's so annoying about this whole situation with my uncle is that it didn't only happen to me, it happened to other people in my family, other relatives, other cousins.
They tend to do that.
Yeah. And it just sucks. Like, just for me now to just kind of like put it all together is just take me to this place that I really don't like to go, because Tajiri touched on something about, you have these memories and they come back, and my memories of it came back in pieces. I remember at 17. And then I remembered another situation at the age of 21. And I'm like, wow, this really, really happened.
Yeah.
And then when I was openly at 17, I shared it with one of my cousins. And when I shared the information with her and how it was and what happened, she related. She goes, I remember that. It happened to me. So
he was a predator.
He really was. And he did it to everybody. And the man is still alive. So right now I am actually, I'm writing my book, and it'll be out in the spring.
Yay.
And that is a portion of in the book that I'm really sharing and talking about and go into more depth about it, because it was really amazing how this whole scenario happened. I mean, being born in a family that were Jehovah's Witnesses, and they still practice that, and it was going on in the household. So they're covering it up, and you're going to the Kingdom Hall while the other kid is being dragged in the back room, being fondled with. So my truth right now is I cannot wait until the book come out. I actually can't wait till this episode is actually possibly showed, because then, because I feel like, I'm coming for him, because I'm letting you know that I do know. And I remember my mom. When my mom passed away in 1996. And I remember at the hospital, I saw my uncle, and it was just gross. And he looked at me, and he gave me this look almost like, gosh, does she remember? And I looked at him like, you sucker, I so remember. But I have nothing to say to you. Like, I'm just kept it pushing, But that was the most, it's heartbreaking when you actually really think about it, when you remember that part. Being molested and being fondled with as a little kid is the most... It's not a good thing, but to move forward and to overcome it. Like, I actually speak to young girls that have actually experienced that in a group, just kind of like talk with them through it, and they share their experiences and now where they are now, how they overcame it, because that's pretty testy. Even when you get into relationships and get married or whatever, not in my case, I'm good with my relationship with that, but other people, like one of my sisters, I got a lot of them, so it could be any of them right now. I'm just saying one of them, right? She had this issue, and it was like a problem, and we would converse about it, because
It's the issue.
Yeah, it's the issue. It's a deep issue.
It is.
Keep you out, you can't perform. And if you feel like if you do, because we get older and we do different things with our husbands or what have you, and it stops you from being able to do these things because you feel dirty.
Yeah.
Because the whole part of being touched makes you feel dirty. I experienced it differently. I have a cousin who was being molested, and kids passed it on.
Mm.
And one issue that's never touched upon is molestation, where kids pass on what is done to them.
Yeah.
And so I had a cousin who would try to touch me, and so it made me feel dirty,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that happens, and it's so sad. And I just want to say, when this airs, any young girl out there who feels alone, who needs to reach out, send us messages.
Yes.
You through it. There's a group somewhere near you, I'm sure, that can help you.
Yes,
You
it is.
are not alone. I don't care what the situation. I don't care if it's domestic violence. I don't care if it's molestation. I don't care if it's you contracted an STD or your boyfriend's cheating on you. You're not alone.
Amen.
Reach out.
Absolutely. Definitely. Thanks to Jerry. Absolutely.
But the good thing is we don't look like what we've been through.
That's right. Amen.
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 You know?
Thank God.
You know, really quick, you guys, this is one of the reasons why I really do what I do as far as my business being called Core Wellness for You. It's about getting to the core issues of your life and seeking and going deep and taking a leap, you know, like really opening up about whatever issues it is. It's wellness, but it's your life and your wellness, because everybody has a story and everybody has, like we're sharing here, everybody's gone through something. So it's not always about what we're eating that's making us heavy. It's the environment that can make us heavy, you know?
Mhm.
And if we carry it and not have an outlet or how to dispose it, then we're messed up. So having this relationship, this form with us, how we're communicating and getting out and just sharing, because this is who we are. You know, we're not what we've been through, but we are empowering other women as well, because we're sharing our story. And that's why Core Wellness for You is empowering and inspiring women to be their best self. And that's what we are. We are being our best self by sharing who we are, why we are, and just being as great as we are. Lynette, you're awesome. Tana, you're awesome.
You too.
We're all awesome. You know
That's
what I mean?
right.
And so
All of you.
we're all awesome. You know, Shanette, Tajuri,
Thank you.
amazing. Kiki, the bomb. Okay, we're just rock stars. All right, that's what we are. But I'm glad we would have this open conversation like this, because it needed to be spoken.
It's needed. Because it's going to
Yeah.
help somebody for us to be transparent, because people may look at us and think, like Tana said, when you look at me, what do you think? You know?
Mhm.
You know, we all were
Right.
looking around, but I'm sure when we met her or whatever, we do look at her as someone who's well put together, you know what I mean? And didn't have really many issues, and, you know, grew up in a spectacular life. And to find out that she was in foster care, she doesn't even, you know her family. And then the birth
Right.
certificate,
That's deep.
that's deep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That your birth certificate is the way it is, you know? I'm just like, wow. So, you know, never judge a book by its cover.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
Breaking news. Okay, our very own Kiki has her own sunglass line out. She Boss, seen up top by Tana's wearing a pair. How awesome are those? We're gonna take you now, Kiki. Tell us about your line.
My line is called Shady She Boss. It's for sunglasses and accessories, and it caters to the fearless women. So we have all types of sunglasses. We have all types of glasses that you can get your prescription in. We also do t-shirts. We have Wife of a Legend t-shirts for the Wife of a Legend. Tana had one.
Yep.
I gotta
We
get
also
one.
have She Boss Luxe Hair. I don't have any in right now. I'm being
Me
honest.
either. I don't have any.
Yeah.
I
Tell
gotta
us
get them.
how we can order them. Where can we order them?
Yes.
Well, you just go online to She Boss Epic on Instagram or Shady She Boss on Facebook, and we'll hook you up.
Yes.
Yes.
I just like to thank all of you for coming out. We all would like to thank all of you for coming out. The women behind the legends. We truly appreciate your staying tuned, and we hope you enjoyed our show.
Yes.
We hope to see you again next week, same time, YouTube. Subscribe, invite a friend. We're always going to have hot topics. Please feel free to leave a comment. Instagram and YouTube, The Women Behind the Legends. See you next week.
See ya.
Deuces.
If you don't
If you
like
don't like it, delete yourself.